Trip to Assisi. The Holy Father delivers hope to the homeless. From the White House to Paris, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris tackle issues overseas. Green card debate. The latest immigration battle surfacing on Capitol Hill. And sense of wonder. Meet the creators of the children's show, The Wonderful World of Benjamin Cello. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 12th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this Feast of St. Josephat. I'm Tracy Sabol. Pope Francis traveled to Assisi, Italy today, where he prayed with the homeless and disadvantaged and with those who help them.
Ha subito con dignità l'esperienza della povertà.
The Holy Father also made an unexpected visit to a convent of the Poor Clares before meeting with several hundred people. The events took place leading to the 5th World Day of the Poor, held this Sunday. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn joins us now from Assisi. Colin, great to see you and welcome back. Can you tell us what it was like there today and who the Pope met with?
Good evening, Tracy, from the town of Assisi in the centre of Italy, where today Pope Francis visited and met with over 500 people from all over the world to honour the homeless, the poorest and those on the margins of society. Now, this is the 5th time Pope Francis has visited Assisi. He arrived in his white papal helicopter around 9 a.m. this morning from the Vatican in Rome, and he went straight to the Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels, which is where the Franciscan order was born. And outside, a refugee gave Pope Francis a pilgrim's walking stick and cloak. The Pope then greeted children with special needs inside the Basilica, as he often does, and then met with the 500 people who had come to see him from across the globe.
And Colin, can you tell us just a little bit more about those people gathered there today? Quite the crowd.
Yes, well, Tracy, these people were mainly Catholic charity workers who in some way were connected with the homeless and those in need. And they also brought some of the homeless and the poor people with them. And a number of these people had a chance to give their testimonies in front of the Pope. And these were quite powerful and emotional. They spoke very directly to the Pope about what life was like in the margins and how they found themselves in the position they did. One was a former drug dealer from Spain, and he recounted how his entire life was turned around after a priest simply smiled at him and then offered him shelter. Then a Romanian woman, she cried as she told Pope Francis that she suffers from such chronic pain that she cannot work. 2 Afghans then recounted how they recently fled to Italy after the Taliban took over their country, but they spoke of feeling that their heart was still in Afghanistan and the pain that that causes them. So, Tracy, emotions were running high in the Basilica this morning. Many people cried and were clearly overcome when sharing their very personal stories with the Holy Father. And in return, Pope Francis thanked them for the courage they had to, as he put it, open their hearts. He said the presence of the poor is often seen by many as an annoyance and something that we just have to put up with in life. He also said that some people are of the opinion that the poor are responsible for looking after themselves. But he stressed that we all need to seriously examine our conscience, our actions, and to look at the injustice of certain laws and economic systems in the world. And he condemned those who want to make themselves excessively rich while letting the weakest get poorer. Hospitality, the Pope said, means opening the doors of our house and the doors of our heart to anyone who knocks. The challenge for us, the Pope said, was to bring them in and make them feel welcomed and not ashamed.
And Colin, before I let you go, we know World Day of the Poor is actually this weekend. So why did the Holy Father make this trip today?
That's right, Tracy. World Day of the Poor is actually this Sunday, but Pope Francis wanted to meet the homeless here in Assisi first, where, of course, St. Francis, the simple friar who lived with the poor and, like the poor, walked these very streets 800 years ago, and, of course, who Jorge Bergoglio chose as his name when he became Pope, the first Pope in history to do so. So this was hugely symbolic to have this special meeting here in Assisi. The Pope then returned to the Vatican by helicopter around midday and will say a special Mass in St. Peter's Basilica on Sunday for World Day of the Poor, where many of the poor people who were in attendance here today will be in attendance there also. But tonight, Tracy, as you can probably hear, there is a lovely atmosphere here in Assisi. Many of those 500 who travelled from all around the world, they're in the cafes and the restaurants and wandering around the streets, exploring this truly beautiful, historic and spiritual town of Assisi. Tracy?
Colin, thank you so much for that report this evening. Colin Flynn, EWTN News Nightly correspondent. Thank you again, Colin.
You're welcome. Thank you, Tracy.
President Joe Biden meets with his cabinet today to work on implementing the bipartisan infrastructure plan. The White House believes that it will help the country recover from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. But there is already more evidence of continued turmoil in the job market as more help wanted signs pop up. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
The latest challenge facing the Biden administration, 4.4 million Americans quit their jobs in the month of September. Now, the Labor Department says that's even higher than in the month of August. Americans are just saying so long to their boss and walking away at a record pace. President Joe Biden meets with his top administration officials.
We can still come together to get something big done for the American people.
The president believes his economic agenda will help the country get back on course.
We owe it to the American people to make sure the money in this infrastructure plan and the Build Back Better plan, which God willing we're going to be able to still finish, will be able to be used for purposes it was intended.
Meanwhile, across the country, employers are struggling to fill open positions. Right now, there are more than 10 million job openings. For workers, that's great news. They're getting pay raises, but inflation is eating into that extra cash. Overseas, Vice President Kamala Harris was asked about it.
That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously.
The vice president later attended a meeting hosted by friends to discuss the future of Libya. Back home, President Biden is nominating former Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Dr. Robert Califf to again lead the regulatory agency. For months, the FDA has lacked a permanent leader. In the press briefing room, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who was recently battling COVID-19, went before reporters with this health update.
I had mild symptoms, primarily fatigue, and I remain incredibly grateful for the vaccine and the impact of the vaccine in keeping me safe.
Also tonight, the White House announced a key meeting for early next week. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping will hold a virtual summit on Monday night. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
The Democrat-backed reconciliation bill has a lot more than just social safety net programs. It also aims to ease immigration rules, new laws that would allow an unlimited number of foreign nationals into the country to work and live permanently. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Tucked inside the thousands of pages of the reconciliation bill are provisions granting unlimited green cards for foreign workers in the high-tech industry of the Silicon Valley area of California. Republicans tell me that these provisions block Americans from getting careers in the industry.
What we found out is that they're proposing what is essentially a big tech giveaway. You know, Facebook just last month had to do a multi-million-dollar settlement with the DOJ because they had discriminated against American workers in favor of foreign workers.
And he's not alone.
We need to make this country stronger every year by taking people that can really help this country become better, and big tech would be a great place to start.
Former President Donald Trump froze green cards for skilled foreign workers, a move aimed at protecting American jobs. President Biden revoked the freeze in February, opening the gates for hundreds of thousands of immigrants to apply for work visas and permanent residence. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of the Silicon Valley area agrees with the president, quote, "It's bad for the U.S. economy to let congressionally authorized immigrant visas go to waste, especially when demand for these visas is so high." Overall, more than 1 million people are waiting for employment-based green cards. Immigration law caps new cards at 140,000 per year. Senator Bill Hagerty tells me he wrote Budget Committee Chair Bernie Sanders, pushing him to remove the green card language. Quote, "These provisions will allow Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and numerous other technology companies across America to employ a functionally limitless supply of cheaper foreign labor in place of willing, able, and qualified American workers." Did Senator Hagerty get a response?
He's yet to respond to that. In fact, nobody has responded to it at the White House. You know, you've not seen Nancy Pelosi respond to it. You haven't seen Bernie Sanders respond to it. They can't defend it because it's indefensible.
Republicans are also appealing to the Senate parliamentarian, arguing that these provisions are actually immigration reform and cannot be in the reconciliation bill. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
A pro-life bill falls short in Slovakia. Its parliament narrowly rejected an extension of its mandatory abortion waiting period from 2 to 4 days. Slovakia's law permits abortion in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. However, doctors are allowed to opt out of performing an abortion. Slovakia is more than 60% Catholic. Portugal's Catholic bishops have approved a committee that will investigate clergy sexual abuse claims. Church leaders say the group will, quote, strengthen and broaden the response to any current or previous allegations. There is no timetable for when the work will begin. Officials in Poland say a group of migrants tried to cross its border earlier today from neighboring Belarus. Officials say the migrants were stopped by Polish soldiers and border guards. Yesterday, officials say that there were more than 200 attempts to illegally cross into Poland from Belarus. Ukraine is adding more security to its border with Belarus, with an additional 8,500 soldiers deployed. Coming up, tracking anti-Semitism, the growing concerns facing Jewish people. Well, in the past few months, there has been a sharp rise in anti-Semitic language splashed across college campuses and public parks nationwide. And people are starting to notice the trend. According to a poll by the American Jewish Committee, 82% of American Jews say that anti-Semitism has increased in the last 5 years. 14% say it has stayed the same. And joining me now is Rabbi Yaakov Menken, Managing Director at the Coalition for Jewish Values. Rabbi Menken, so good to see you again. Let's talk about those poll numbers. Do they surprise you at all? And what do you think is fueling this rise in anti-Semitism?
First of all, the only surprise to me is the 14% who don't recognize that anti-Semitism is rising in the country. It's a very sad phenomenon. It's obviously been fueled by the anti-Israel narrative. Anti-Semitism always, even the name anti-Semitism is a facade, a euphemism for Jew hatred. It was actually developed in Germany pre the Nazi era, and it was considered very acceptable to be an anti-Semite. Well, today it's considered to be anti-Israel is considered acceptable when nobody is anti a country.
You know, as we mentioned, I know that you know, there's been a number of anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses, most recently at George Washington University in D.C., where a copy of the Torah was purposely damaged during a burglary at a fraternity party, fraternity house, that is. How concerning is that to you, to see these types of incidents occurring at institutions of higher learning where you would think people would be more tolerant?
It's not about the one incident. It's about the wave of incidents. The fact that today, as we saw over the summer, quote unquote pro-Palestinian protests turned into random assaults on individual Jews who were nearby. And yeah, actually, it's felt the most on college campuses. We have a history to look at. The historical record is very clear that half of the architects of the Nazis' final solutions, the Wannsee Conference, half the people there had PhDs. So academic excellence is no substitute for moral courage and moral backbone, not to mention a moral compass.
Yeah, and meantime, earlier this week, the Israeli ambassador to the UK was harassed while she was speaking at the London School of Economics, and then she had to be rushed out to her vehicle by guards. What more do you know about that situation, and what does all this signal?
Well, it's actually, I'll give you one very simple thing. I mean, she was able to complete her talk, which is a very, that obviously that was a good sign. She was protected. They were able to actually have a debate and a discussion, which, of course, is exactly that which the haters were trying to close down. They don't want to have a discussion. They don't want to hear voices, because if you hear both sides, it's actually very clear that they are portraying, they're just giving you a false narrative. But in any case, when she came out, they started yelling at her, "Are you ashamed? Israel's a terrorist state," et cetera, et cetera. And I was immediately reminded of historical footage from the Nazi era of people, including young men and women, yelling at people coming out of their synagogues about how they should be ashamed for all the bad things that Jews have been doing. Well, how little has changed.
Yeah, so concerning. Earlier this week, Vice President Harris spoke out against anti-Semitism. Not sure if you heard that or not, but do you think maybe the words that she spoke were strong enough of a rebuke? And what would you like to see from the Biden administration?
Well, her words to the ADL conference were actually very good. She said all the right things. She hit all the right notes. The problem is that within the past 2 months, there was a college student at a campus that she visited, and I'm not even sure was that not George Washington, where a student accused Israel of ethnic genocide, and her reaction was to say, "Oh, it's so important that we have your voice." That was a moment for moral courage. Again, it was a time to have a moral voice and say, wait a minute. When you have an Arab community that has the longest lifespans in the region, the best medical care, the best access to higher education, the lowest infant mortality, and you call that genocide, you're doing it wrong. And she was not willing to say that. The Biden administration has to look, I mean, the progressive left that is now driving so much of the narrative in all these economic issues and the new funding that they want to get approved, the same progressive left has been promoting this anti-Semitic narrative about Israel and at large, thus, about Jews. And we're not hearing the condemnations of that need to be said.
Oh, Rabbi, so much more we could talk about, but unfortunately we have to wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming on and weighing in on this for us.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, how Catholic aid groups are preparing for the holidays amid growing food prices, and how one family is spreading the gospel through music. The holiday season is nearly upon us, and food banks are facing a very difficult situation. More people are seeking necessities due to the pandemic and economic challenges, and fewer people are donating. It is especially difficult due to supply chain bottlenecks, which are helping to drive up food costs and leaving shelves empty at many supermarkets. And joining me now is Monsignor John Ensler, President and CEO of Catholic Charities DC. Monsignor, welcome. So good to see you, and thank you for your time. According to officials with Feeding America, a network of food banks, as you know, there is a 55% more food being distributed now than before the pandemic. What are y'all seeing at Catholic Charities?
The almost exact same number, 54%. Are basically now more than it was before the pandemic. The need keeps going up, and in fact, half as much as it was before. And so we're dealing with big questions of food for a lot of people. In the district and surrounding areas, about 10% of our people are food deprived, 10%. And many of them actually are employed, but they can't afford to pay their rent, do their other issues, take care of their children, and have food as well. So it's a lot of people come together in need of all kinds of services, and without food, they can't get much at all.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, how is inflation and the rising food costs, how is it impacting you at Catholic Charities? I mean, are your resources being stretched really thin now?
Yes and no. I think we buy a lot in bulk, which is good. We do these share packages with food for for 20 meals or so for people when they come in. That part's good. But the reality is that you go to the store yourself, you see that the shelves are empty or not empty, but close to empty. Where do you get the basic things you need? So, yeah, it's affecting us, but we've got a pretty big operation. We served 5.4 million meals last year. And that's basically, that's 54% higher there than the year before. So we're still doing a great job. But yes, the more this happens, the more people in line. More people in line, more need for food. The issues are great for us.
Yeah, and as we know, the holidays can be a really tough time, especially for those in need. How does this season, at least what you're seeing so far, how does it compare to last year for those coming in and asking for assistance?
Well, the big thing I think is that it's going up for sure. More people need help and assistance. We do holiday meals at Thanksgiving, and we do one around Christmas. And there, 300 or 400 people come to both of those. And the numbers are certainly real, and they keep growing because people really want service. The good news is, and this is a concern of mine, people come the holidays to help out, like your listeners may, and viewers may come during the holidays because they have a sense of we work with people. But what happens in February and March and April? So getting people to say, I'm going to be a consistent donor of food, a consistent donor of help, that's important to us, not just now, but all throughout the coming winter.
Yeah, certainly. And what about donations? What are you seeing as far as donations? And what's the biggest need right now for you all?
Well, the donations, believe it or not, are pretty good. I think that the pandemic, COVID-19, has reminded people how blessed they are. The interesting thing, most of us, I for sure, am blessed and don't have needs that I'm worried about. And people in our parishes oftentimes have the same. It's the people who maybe don't have those basic support systems, they come for help. So the donations actually are going up. And that's great. During COVID, we received about $2.5 million of donations for food and for shelter. But on the other hand, basically, if government money stops coming to people for their rent assistance, that happens as more people come to us, not just for food, but for sustenance to keep them in their places where they live. So holidays, huge to be successful and take care of people now. But I also worry about what's after the holidays, where people continue to give regularly because, as they say, hunger isn't just a month-long deal. It's going to be the whole year, at least during the wintertime for many, many people.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, too. That is so important. It really is a year-round need. Well, Monsignor Ensler, thank you so much for your time today, and God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for letting us talk about a real need for people. Otherwise, we'd not hear their voice. So you're the voice now of lots of people who need help and concern, and thank you for letting us share that. Just one more thing I mentioned, we have a virtual food drive coming up. Right now, we're doing it right now. A chance to basically people to give donations to that. If you want to do that, basically you can go to CatholicCharitiesDC.org/give-a-meal. CatholicCharitiesDC.org/give-a-meal, and you can send contributions to help us here. But also, I would say your audience is broad. Every diocese I know of has Catholic Charities. Every diocese I know has had need for food. So wherever you live, make a contribution to helping people in your own community.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thank you so much, Monsignor. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
And finally tonight, after being rejected by secular media companies, a children's show hopes to spread the gospel in a new and tuneful way. The Wonderful World of Benjamin Cello is now in its second season, and the people behind the show have a unique story of creativity and conversion. Correspondent Mark Irons reports.
Christ is risen from the dead. The actors,
we might illuminate the night,
and actresses bringing this colorful children's show to life all have a common mission, and they're all related.
It's quite the family affair.
Over the last 2 decades, the Woolliver family has made a name for themselves as the Annie Moses Band.
Oh God, my Father.
In 2019, they decided to take their musical talent from stage to screen with the faith-filled production of The Wonderful World of Benjamin Cello, created by Robin Woolliver, the mother of this musical clan. She noticed how many Disney songs her grandchildren knew and how few hymns. She says the time children spend in front of screens can be influential.
vision. And we have got to meet that. And we must saturate our children in truth.
When the family first started creating Benjamin Cello, there were challenges. Industry professionals wanted references to God in the show to be removed before funding the project. The Woolivers wouldn't do that. After being rejected by multiple secular streaming services, the family made the decision to move out to the Tennessee countryside, build their own studio, and create their own media company.
We have had so much fun, though. You know, God is so amazing.
It's not the first major transition this group has been through. Years ago, as they traveled the world playing music, they made another move that was life-changing. This whole family of Protestants converted to Catholicism.
It was really just a move of God.
Each member had different experiences that brought them closer to the Catholic faith. For Benjamin Wooliver, seen with his cello on screen, it was the writings of the saints. And as a Protestant, he says he was familiar with the Catholic Church, but experiencing God's love in the sacraments was something he could not articulate until he converted.
What I tried to communicate to people, it's like trying to imagine a symphony when you've only heard a few fiddles. You know, you just have to really have the Holy Spirit open your mind to something greater than you could have imagined.
And it's that imagination coming to life in the world of Benjamin Cello, finding a fresh way to spread the gospel. The show can be streamed on Right Now Media and Formed.
Remember, God loves you. We hope to, in everything we do, create that sense of wonder that makes people grateful for what God's given them, for who He is, who He's created us to be.
In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
And thank you for watching tonight. For all of us here, good night and God bless.